This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Wheel of Time fans? This is Steven, your host from Fantology. I'm with my lifelong friend Jake and my brother-in-law and also lifelong friend Caden. This is the Wheel of Time crew from Fantology. And this is exciting because we are actually in person, and that does not happen very often due to general life constraints. But we just finished watching the first 3 episodes of the Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime and have a lot to say, right? Right?
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
Got a lot of thoughts in my head right now.
Yeah. So maybe before we get to general thoughts, maybe not general thoughts. Before we get to specific thoughts, let's get some general opinions on this series. Like, first of all, did we like it? Yes, right?
Yes.
We did like it.
I mean, I'm always going to like it no matter what it is. I'm going to watch it all.
Yeah.
To be honest, and I think I'm going to stick out, I think it was more disappointing than I thought it would be.
But is that because of maybe expectations that were too high for you because of just years of hype?
It had more to do with production quality than it did like adapting the story, if that makes sense.
Okay. And I think I am going to disagree with you. I thought the production quality was really good. And I think you can't expect it to be the budget of a movie, right? Like,
no,
they spent $10 million an episode, right? That was the number that's been thrown around.
I just don't know where that 10 million went.
But so that's a budget of $80 million over, a long time, 8 hours, compared to a movie of what, like 200-300 million.
That's true. Yeah.
For 2 hours. So they've got so much more to throw at CGI and everything. And there's obviously a lot spent on just the scenery, the location,
which those things
I'm sure this stuff all adds up. None of us have any experience in,
like I said, I'm
production,
just wondering where it went. I'm not sure. But that is a good way to frame it. 80 million for 8 hours versus a standard blockbuster. You're thinking like 200 million for 2 hours, so.
And I think it lived up to the trailers when watching. There was, I was hyped, I was excited, and it met the expectations I had for it, which was I loved it. It was good.
And my expectations got pretty high after the trailers, honestly. And I thought it was at the level of the trailers. I don't think it was amazing, 10 out of 10. I agree that there were some things that I would like to see get better as time passes. I'm really hoping that it catches on, gets big, so more money gets thrown at it. And maybe we can see some improvements to some of the things that Jake has some criticisms on. I agree they weren't the best, but overall, this is very high, like way above average for television. This is still the small screen. And I think if we start thinking like we expect the quality of a movie, like you can compare to Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings is a movie and it's not as long. Like all 3 Lord of the Rings movies comes to the same length as the Wheel of Time first season. And it's, the budget would have been pretty different. Granted, those movies are old, so it's a tough comparison maybe.
Yeah, I thought the quality overall in terms of like effects was a little lower than what the trailers led me to believe. I think that was my biggest disappointment. And like usually that stuff doesn't really bother me in the long run. Like that's what I'm saying. I still like this adaptation. It's not like I don't like it, but I feel like I'm seeing the same type of quality that season 1 of The Witcher in a lot of spaces, and people like really criticized that. And I expected it to be significantly better than that. But it's not like a deal breaker.
Sure. Okay. So other than the CGI stuff, which I'm assuming you're kind of going into, like some of the Trollocs maybe looked a little tough during the action sequences. Maybe the magic looked a little cheesy. I'm assuming that is your...
Yeah, I guess specific instances would be most of the times the Trollocs are running or moving. It didn't quite look right. And a specific scene where Moraine, pretty cool, she like rips a Trolloc in half with what I assume are wheeze of air, but that looked kind of janky in my opinion.
Okay. But the one that is terrorizing Nynaeve and Egwene. Yeah.
But don't take this as me being a naysayer. I hate the series. I'm just trying to be as
Sure.
Like if
the voice of reason.
you came at the series not interested in Wheel of Time at all, never read the books, never like heard anything, you saw this, I think the effects would be a put off to some people.
Okay, well, yeah, let's definitely gather some opinions from those who are not big fans of the series. But yeah, we don't want to be too much of naysayers because there's a lot of positives. And I'll start with just the general look of the non-CGI stuff, like all of the scenery and it was a bit of a travel log throughout, but I thought a lot of that looked really cool and really just put me right into the world. And I was very immersed. Like, I've watched 3 hours of this now twice, and this is Friday, so I watched it twice, and I was really captivated the whole time.
I thought it sucked me right. Like the first book when I read it, the scenes with Rand going to the main town, and it sucked me in just like the book did the first episode, and I really liked that.
Yeah, Emmons Field, or I guess they call it the Two Rivers in the show. It looked really cool, and they built it all and they burned it all down. So if you're asking where the budget went, I think a lot of it went to building and burning down a town. Not a very efficient way to spend money, but it came across really cool. So I think that's a first episode that's going to draw a lot of people in.
And it's kind of from someone who's read the books. Like there are things that I had pictured in my head, and it was interesting what things like lived up to that. And I thought Emmons Field like outdid what I had pictured it to be. And same with like Shadar Loga. I thought it kind of was cool to like expand on that, where some things weren't as good as what I thought. But,
yeah. Overall, I mean, speaking of the scenery, I think the location, choosing to film it in Prague in the Czech Republic, I assume that's where most of the outside shots were taken, were amazing. Like super beautiful and very fantasy. It's awesome, even though like most of them were natural shots from what I could tell. Obviously they added in stuff, but yeah, really like the scenery. Location.
It looked cool, and I thought the acting was also really solid across the board. Like what performances especially stick out to you guys?
Matt and Nynaeve for me. Matt first and then Nynaeve. I feel like we did like the Emmons Field 5 intro, and one of the things Ben said is Nynaeve is a character that is really awesome. You just have to give her some time, and like she has these strong weaknesses, and you have to give some time to like connect to her, and she's awesome. And I think the show did an amazing job of making me really connect with her character and really like her right from the get-go. But I think Matt is the standout. They obviously made some changes to his character that I was kind of unsure about beforehand, but after watching it, like his performance with the material he has is top notch.
I liked how Rand, like, I feel like their personalities they nailed. Rand was very moody and kind of weird. Perrin was very quiet, right? I can picture him, in his head being like, I got to think about this before I talk, kind of a thing. And I felt like for all of them, they hit the personalities right on, which was I really liked.
And Perrin especially, you could tell he had a lot going on inside of his head, most of it around accidentally killing his wife and blaming himself and not wanting to. This is something that he was unable to, at least through 3 episodes, hasn't told anyone about. And you can just see that weighing on him. And I think, the Perrin character wasn't as much of a standout for me just because he didn't have as much to do in the first 3 episodes. He was just kind of along for the ride, but I'm hopeful that he can kind of expand on what's set up so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think, unfortunately, there isn't a lot to like really connect to and like about Perrin right now. And I think it's one of those kind of like what we said about Nynaeve before, is you just have to give them some time because they're setting up some really cool parts of the story. Yeah,
I think thus far, Nynaeve, if I had to say like who's the breakout star through 3 episodes, I think Nynaeve. We didn't talk about Egwene at all, and I thought she was also really good. I thought all 5 of the Emmons Field 5 were pretty good. She is we talked about her being a little bit different than the books. They've all kind of aged up a bit, and she is now kind of a little more level-headed. Whereas like a lot of them are kind of like, oh, we're off on an adventure, but now, these 3 episodes are more, a little more grounded in realism, a little more on the grim side of we're on an adventure and the Dark One's army is trying to kill us. Like, this is a hard thing to be on. And I think a lot of it, the show really kind of leans into that.
Yeah, I like Egwene, especially in the books, her character is more, she's just in awe, being able to leave her village, and is excited about that, excited about the possibility to maybe learn from Moraine. And whereas Rand in the books is like, why do you want to do this? Like, this is terrible. And I think Rand is closer in the show to his book character, but Egwene more in the books isn't so much inspired just by this awe and like sense of adventure as much as this is the right thing to do. Like, this is logical. This is obviously, like, if you reason it out, what we need to do, just get over it. Which, I mean, a lot of these changes, like I think Sanderson said, this adaptation is going to be a lot more like the changes from Lord of the Rings books to TV or to show to the movies. Whereas a lot of these characters change the same way, like kind of how Aragorn is different in the books to the movies. These are changes that still hold the core of the character, but kind of apply it better in this medium.
One that felt a little forced to me was Tom's character, and how he kind of like, in the book, it felt a little bit more natural. Like, hey, I'll go with you guys because that's the way I'm heading already, right? And he kind of gets roped in. Yeah, just like how he meets them and gets, and he's like, hey, follow me. That felt a little bit more forced to me than in the books.
He always like, oh, let's show up and kill his dark friend.
Right.
And like, oh, by the way, you guys who have no connection to, like, you're with me now in this fight for our lives.
He did kind of connect to Matt right before then, which I can see. I don't know.
It does seem like a lot for him to just be suddenly risking his life for these kids.
And you know, Matt, or you find out later, like Tom had more reasons to stay with them in the books than initially like were apparent. And so I wonder if they still have time to build to that in the show.
That was because of the Aes Sedai connection to his nephew, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he basically, I mean, we're doing full spoilers, right? Like, no.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
we are now.
Okay. He overhears the Dana character in the show say, one of you is the dragon. So I feel like a lot of those things are still there for Tom to hear, okay, these boys are in trouble. One of them could potentially channel, like, I don't even know if they're going to continue that connection with his nephew Owen and everything.
Yeah, they could do a different backstory.
But I think there's enough there that it could still develop that way.
To be fair, they're also condensing stuff that happened over a lot more time in the book into a shorter period of time as well, right? And they have to for the show. And obviously, it's, you know, a fantasy book that takes a long time for them to travel places, and there's a lot of character development that happens.
Yeah. And I think part of the Tom decision was maybe a little forced by them thinking, okay, how many characters can we introduce in the first episode before we burn the town down? I think there just wasn't room for Tom on the screen, and they wanted to do like a cool intro and have him sing something, and like that would have taken up another 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. In the first episode, they were just like, oh, we don't have time for this.
I will say I am a fan of them adding songs to the show a lot. I think that adds a lot. I'm glad The Witcher did that. Like, it didn't seem like something I've only read through, I think, Blood of Elves and The Witcher. And so it's not like I haven't got a sense that this is like part of its identity, but it's more so an identity in
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings for sure, but even The Wheel of Time a little bit. And so I'm glad they did that. That being said, I think Tom's intro song kind of fell flat for me. It was just like so somber out of nowhere. And I did like the connections to like Luce Theron in there and everything, but I was like, man, I was hoping my first introduction to the Gleeman would have been a little
more upbeat, like Glee,
more performative. You know, he kind of sat up there and just like, okay, here's a sad song. I strum a few chords and we're done. But
I mean, the singing was great.
Great. But
and I love his voice. Just him talk. I could listen to him talk for a while.
Also, like, how hard would it have been to get the mustaches? Come on, guys.
It's not really cool.
Jake, not everyone can grow. I mean,
he had it there. He had all he had to do was let it grow long. That's all he had to do.
I think I'm just jealous of your ability to compare to me, but and I think there was some like fan depiction of him with the mustaches, and he looked cool. And I think you were wanting what's his face, Sam.
I mean, everyone wanted Sam Elliott 20 years ago, but at this point, I don't know if he's a little old for that.
Maybe he'll grow the mustaches eventually.
Yeah, there's still time for that. That's not a real criticism.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so Moraine and Lan. We didn't talk about the two really the two like headlining cast members.
I really like them. Lan doesn't have as imposing of a presence as he does in the books so far, but I really like what they're doing with him and Nynaeve. Like I like that he has more autonomy and like more time to develop relationships with people. I think Moraine Rosamund Pike is an amazing actress, and I was kind of sad that she was out of the count for
Just
for most of these
sidelines
episodes.
yeah.
But I think it's adding a lot to. It's letting them do a lot more with the show in an interesting way.
I think one thing that they did well is in the book, it felt they, at least Lan at the beginning, he's just doing what Moraine wants him to do. Doesn't really have doesn't seem like he cares as much about Rand and the rest of them. But by the end of the book 1 or 2, he does. And I think we're seeing that start to happen more, or we will. So I think they were true to that, which I liked.
Yeah. So putting Rosamund Pike, sidelining her, lets Lan kind of take a leadership role. I will say, I don't know if he did a very good job when he was in charge. Like, but at the same time, the Trollocs were coming, right? So it's hard to say he did a good job or a bad job. But he did he lets like Rand and Egwene wander around in Shadar Logoth. Matt sneaks away in the middle of the night. That's hard to account for. I mean,
if we're being fair, look at the source material. Those were all decisions made by Moraine in the books. So like if you're going to criticize Lan for it, then you got to criticize Moraine in the books for that.
But if they're trying to hype up Moraine and their the Aes Sedai, right? It makes more sense to put that on Lan, right, than on Moraine.
So we wanted to mention like what do non-readers think about the show, and one of our friends, actually Ryan's wife, Ryan, another member of Fantology, thought that Lan was actually evil because he led them into Shadar Logoth, and Moraine's like, don't do that.
And she's like, you've killed us all.
Yeah. So Sydney right now thinks that Lan is in fact evil. Okay, we'll see. That'd be a pretty dramatic change.
Yeah. I've been trying to view this in a couple different ways. Like, first of all, how good of an adaptation from the books is this to screen? And then also, like, how good and in terms of that, I guess there's like multiple forks to this question, but how good of an adaptation is it? How good of a job did they do like engaging already fans to this? In terms of like not like paying some fan service and making sure like you hit those points fans love, but also like more importantly for Amazon, how good of a job have they done to engage people who have never been a fan of Wheel of Time or don't really know much about it. Overall, as an adaptation up to this point of book 1, I think it's pretty good. I think the biggest weakness it has is pacing for me, especially in episode 1, but even in episode 3, there's some weird pacing moments, like what they're choosing to focus on and like last longer. But pacing is going to be hard to adapt to the Eye of the World anyways, because it's this village to this village to this village to this village to.
How do you keep it interesting?
So that, I think that's just inherently going to be weak. And so I think they really can improve that as the show goes on, especially in seasons 2 and 3. I don't know. What do you guys think about general adaptation of it?
One thing I liked better about the show than the book, like you have this big question, who is the Dragon Reborn? And in the book, that's not really so much of a mystery because of the viewpoints, right, of who you're reading through. At least I felt like reading it. And in the show, it feels a lot more like, oh, if you're a first time viewer, I wouldn't know who it is. Right.
Yeah, I've really liked that they're leaning into that mystery because it makes it more compelling. And I think right now it seems like they're hinting at it more towards Egwene. There's been a couple transitions in like scene to scene that like they'll end one scene talking about the Dragon Reborn, the next scene will focus on Egwene. And
another one of our friends who hadn't read the book was like, oh, Egwene must be the bad one. I mean, she clearly didn't understand that the dragon wasn't necessarily bad. But she was half watching. She was half watching, to be fair. But then it went to Egwene. So
I haven't, like, my first time reading through The Eye of the World was so long ago. It's so hard to like remember how I felt reading it. But if I remember right, it wasn't so much wondering who. Like, it wasn't like whether a question of Rand was a main character, but my first time reading it, it wasn't clear that someone was going to be the Dragon Reborn. in the Eye of the World when I first read it. And you've read it for the first time more recently. So did you know one of them was the dragon? Because Moraine doesn't say in the books right away why she's taking them.
Yeah, at the beginning you don't know that's what it's about. I don't remember thinking that. But as soon as it comes up, you're like, oh,
it's got to be Rand. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so like at the end of the book, obviously.
You just know they're important at the beginning and they're going on this adventure. And as soon as you get the more story, you're like, obviously.
Well, it's like all Rand point of view. It's just it's Rand all the way through. He's the main character.
But the Dragon Reborn isn't such a focus in most of book one. Whereas in the show now, the Dragon Reborn is a focus, but you don't know who it is.
I think the focus in the book is more like Rand accepting it himself. Like there's moments where he's finally like, oh, I'm double marked with the herons, or like things like that. He's like, oh, I just did this thing and I was in the sky, right?
Yeah.
Like that. Those moments I feel like are what the book was more about than is it who
yeah.
Or then there's the subtle moments of him channeling and we start to see that. Well, I guess we see it when he burst through the door.
It seemed like they were
says
focusing on that.
Yeah, she says, "Oh, well, 4 men couldn't break this down," and lo and behold, he breaks it down moments later.
He's a strong sheeper.
Yeah,
nothing else is going on there.
He's just really strong. he's got some pewter going on there from Mistborn. Or
makes me think. Do you think they'll do a lightning scene? Because that would be really cool if they could still do the lightning scene at some point.
Remind me what scene you're talking
about? The lightning scene?
Well, I'm thinking of one I don't know now.
In book
I'm
one.
Worried. Okay,
yeah, where I mean, similar situation. Matt and Rand, this is after Tom is gone, are like
cornered in the
staying at an inn, and then like dark friends surround them. It's like storming outside, and then Rand calls lightning. He doesn't realize he does. He calls lightning, and they get away. And he's sick for the next week. Matt is like blind for half a day. And I
remember when they're on the with Bail Domon. And he makes the boom of the ship fly over and knocks some trucks off, right?
Yeah, it's after that, but
okay,
that was like one of the main
I should have reread book one leading up. I wanted to, just didn't have time.
So I wonder if this is a replacement for that, which would be sad, but I get with budget restraints.
No, it would be sad because Moraine's channeling was so cool, right? Invisible, I guess.
Yeah,
like you knew exactly who she was channeling. That I hope you see more of that from Rand's point of view, at least from the trailers with with Logain. Or
I just wonder if maybe it would make it too obvious that it's Rand if they did a whole lightning bolt,
right?
Although they've mentioned that they're Taviran and kind of like a throwaway line, but they haven't really talked about what that means.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and I feel like in the books you could say, oh, maybe the lightning happened because he's Taviran and not because of channeling, just like the pattern woven a lightning bolt there to save him.
But it does happen a lot in the first couple of books.
It does,
so.
Yeah.
So like Matt's modus operandi.
we talked about new viewers, right? And so that's something new viewers might come in and be like, okay, there's a lot of vocab words here. Taviran is given as a, like you say, a throwaway line. I think Moraine says, oh, there's 4 Taviran over here in the Two Rivers. And do they ever say the word Taviran again? Yeah.
My personal opinion right now is they've done a lot in the series to engage current fans. But I think they have a long way to go to grab people who don't know much about the Wheel of Time. I think if I had seen this without seeing the Wheel of Time at all, I'd been like, oh, this is interesting. I like Lord of the Rings. Like I'll stay tuned, but there wasn't really that much for me to fall in love and be really captured in it.
Sure. Like you could see people watching it, but not necessarily thinking and theorizing and maybe getting super involved
at this point
yet.
Yeah, as of episode 3.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think that might be the source material. Like book 1 is not super
it's very straightforward.
Eventful. Yeah. But
I was gonna say, to me, it comes down to almost like the cliffhangers at the end of each episode. For someone who's read the books, you're like, yes, this is what I want. Yeah. But if not, you're like, oh, they're gonna run out to the next place, right?
Right. Yeah, for someone who hasn't read, we're like, oh my gosh, Logain, here he is. Finally, we've obviously seen the trailer. We knew he was going to be in it, but now here he is. Mm-hmm. But someone who hasn't read is like, oh, they got a guy here. Yeah. What?
And let's try to look at it through the viewpoint of someone who hasn't read the books. And so the ending of each episode, ending of episode 1 is them leaving. And so if you aren't a fan of the
leaving
Wheel of Time,
and
someone is the Dragon Reborn.
and Rosamund voiceover of the intro,
Yeah.
right? Which was fan service, but good. I thought it was good.
It was
So
good.
I think
I'm a
that
fan.
that ending would be good for people who aren't fans yet. Be like, okay, they're about to start this adventure after this big battle. Like, interesting. End of the second one, Nynaeve is back, and you have the whole Shatter Logoth thing. I think that is like, okay, everyone's split. It's escalated the conflict. So I think that could engage you. And then the ending of the third one with Logain, well, you have Matt and Perrin joining with Tom, and then meeting the Tinkers.
Matt and Rand with
Matt
Tom
and Rand.
and Egwene and Perrin with Tinkers. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the Tinkers, not. I mean, that's kind of intriguing, but not a ton.
Not exciting.
I think the intriguing thing for meeting Logain for people who aren't already fans is, Moraine says one of them is the dragon, but Leandrin is now saying we caught a dragon reborn. It's interesting they didn't call him a false dragon in the in that episode, and so maybe the pull there is like, she thought one of these guys was a dragon reborn, but now they said they've caught a dragon reborn.
Although, as the watcher of the show, you're like, Moraine must be right. Like, she's Rosamund Pike. She's smart. She knows everything.
You already get the evil.
That Leandrin is like more
not evil, but negative. You get like a not a happy character.
Yeah, she's a Slytherin, clearly.
Speaking of Leandrin, we can get to what our favorite parts are, and we'll do the favorite and least favorite parts at the end. But.
Okay, sure.
Well, just to finish off on that, like even that scene, right, as a new viewer or as a fan, you're like, hey, this is Leandrin. You didn't know who it was before, right? So it's another part of the cliffhanger that plays to fans, not to someone who has no idea. You're just like, oh, there's someone named Leandrin.
Yeah.
You talked about the end of the second episode with Nynaeve coming back. Do you think people actually thought she was dead? I mean, when she got dragged, I was like, oh, this is different, potentially dead, obviously not dead because, one, they're not going to kill Nynaeve. Hopefully, like I would have words for that, but also we've seen in the trailers a lot of stuff that she's done down the line that we haven't seen yet. So clearly she's not dead, but I did have some anxiety, like, she's got to come back. We don't want her to be dead. But like we always say, or like I always like to say, if someone's dying off screen in fantasy, they're not really dead. But I wonder, maybe people thought that she was actually dead, and that was a surprise reveal when she came back.
One thing it did for me is I feel like in the books, Nynaeve like jumps power levels, like just like immediately. Suddenly she's like, boom, I'm a full Aes Sedai. And I feel like this was to show, it helped me see from the beginning, like, hey, she's kind of actually like a bad A, and it's gonna, shouldn't just go from nothing to something.
Yeah, and
the braid flip was the moment where
I'm really
that's my least favorite moment.
No, that's one of my top moments. I would say I think they focus enough on the other four that if you didn't know the characters already, it's like, oh yeah, this person's dead. Like you could have seen her just, this is Egwene's mentor. Like that is her role, and her role isn't needed now because they're leaving the village. So like chalk her up to being dead. I think if you didn't know, I think you could have assumed that. I don't think there's anything to make you think she's too important to be killed off screen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And it's cool to see her develop differently than the other four of them. She's not just being let out like all of them as well, which I think adds a little bit more story to it, which I do like.
Do you guys want to just talk about the changes we've seen so far?
Yeah.
And like how you felt about that?
Okay, sure.
First,
the first thing I noticed was the four Taviran.
Like
immediately, like that was the first.
And that the Dragon Reborn could be male or female.
I feel like we've talked, like if you have been a fan of the show or a fan of the books, you already knew that change was coming based off of promotional stuff.
And if you're not a fan, you probably
don't care.
Don't even care at all.
You don't care about the segment of changes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You're right.
The Taviran thing for me isn't a big deal because Egwene's, she's a main character in the series anyway, so you could chalk up everything that happens to her.
I
mean,
Taviran is a bit of a plot device, and Egwene has enough exciting things happen, she could be one too.
I have no problem with it at all.
It's just a in-world
something different,
canonized plot armor, and Rand, Matt, and Perrin have it in the books, and Egwene doesn't. She just has canonized plot armor. So.
I mean, Nynaeve could be a Taviran as well. Moraine could be a Taviran. Like all the main characters should really be Taviran.
Yeah, and I think they had to include her in the Taviran if they were going to make the change of boy or girl.
And who's the
for Dragon Reborn. Yeah, so that change to me, I think is fine. I don't think it's going to have there's going to be some ripple effects, but like not consequential.
Sure.
Less than changing the Dragon Reborn to be boy or girl, and even that I think has few enough ripples down the line that it's not going to alter most of the plot. And it will. I do see the point of trying to be more progressive. Like when it was written, it was a pretty progressive series, and like actualizing that to today's world. But
past that, Perrin and Matt's backstories both different. Perrin the most. We talked about him killing Lila, his wife.
Layla,
yeah. And so just the fact that he's married and has that bit of backstory, I like it. I think it was good to kind of separate these guys, because Rand, Matt, and Perrin, like, yes, there's some differences to their backstories, but really they're kind of like generic heroes from a backwoods town. And now they all have like at least one thing different about them to start off.
And I think all the changes they've made to their backstories have been to help further their character arcs. I guess like jumpstart them, because like for Perrin, a huge part of his character arc is this internal struggle of, do I give in to this rage and this like violent side of me, or do I focus on this, building peaceful life?
Yeah, no, we've seen it right from the beginning.
Yeah, you get it right from the beginning. My only criticism with the Layla thing is, I don't like, they have the scene where, and they talk about like, oh, your wife's at the forge, it's lonely being there alone. And it kind of made it seem like either Perrin doesn't want to be around her, or she definitely doesn't want to be around other people. And there's like this conflict they created there. And then she dies. And it's like, why didn't if this has no purpose, which it seemingly doesn't, I know there's a theory out there that Layla's a dark friend.
Yeah, because she's a dark friend.
Okay, I'll address all of it. Okay, let's assume she's not a dark friend.
Let's assume she is.
No, I'm going to address both. Let's assume she's not a dark friend. It would have been more impactful, him accidentally killing her, if they had this amazing relationship and they didn't put any like conflict there, because it would have been like perfect life. And then, oh no, I ruined, like, it would have added more weight to it. And so if she's not a dark friend, if they just added this conflict for no reason, it's like, why did, one of those things where I'm like, why did they choose to focus time on this when it doesn't really seem to add much? The other side of that is people think Layla's a dark friend, and that's why she was so moody, and it's alluding to that. That theory could be true. I think that would be bad writing as well, because it would be.
Well, hang on. There's two more bits to the theory. One is that before he killed her, she was like, had the axe or whatever weapon she had, maybe a hammer at the time, raised overhead, ready to strike down the dead Trolloc. Like, what? Like, no, she was trying to kill Perrin because she's a dark friend.
So that's,
and also later on in the third episode, the wolf is eating her because the wolves, obviously enemies of the Dark One, are trying to.
I'm glad you brought this up so I can try to dismantle both.
So this is the reason for the theory.
So her with the hammer, the thing is that, like, the theory is she's about to kill Perrin or knock him out or something. Perrin was grabbed by a Trolloc, and she comes in like 10 seconds earlier in that scene and kills the Trolloc that grabbed Perrin. If she wanted to kill Perrin,
she had to act
she
like
wanted
she
to
was on the good
Perrin,
side.
She would have just let the Trolloc take him and be like, oh no, I can't do anything. Instead of, I'll kill that Trolloc and then I'll do you sneaky somehow. I don't know. That doesn't line up. And then if she is like further down the line, we're going to need a flashback to show somehow, or like they'll bring up, oh, she was a dark friend. How does this help with his internal struggle? It would be, all it would do is add a layer of complexity that is like unnecessary of, I feel bad I killed my wife, but she's a dark friend. So should I feel bad about that? Maybe I should give in to my rage because I accidentally kill people and they could turn out to be dark friends anyway.
Very intricate.
Maybe it's good to accidentally kill people. No, not good.
That's a lot of things to think about as a character. That's very, very interesting.
And then going to the wolf thing, I think that probably gives the most credence to it. But it'd be to me a change in the sense of, once Perrin hasn't gotten to a point where he like understands what's going on with the wolves. And Hopper or whatever wolf doesn't guard his dream until after he's had that acceptance. And when they're guarding the dream, Bazelman isn't there. And the dream where the wolf is eating Layla, Bazelman isn't there. So it's not like the wolf is there guarding it. It just seems like that was a nightmare more than anything, not an important dream, just a nightmare. He had just had this encounter with wolves.
Sure. Okay, Caden, split the tie. Is she a dark friend?
Her too, and they didn't try to kill Thane.
Yeah.
Never say a thing.
Yeah,
I can never
Fane.
remember.
So
Yeah.
not a dark friend.
So not a dark friend.
Not a dark.
Not
Okay,
a
not
dark
okay. Not a dark friend.
I totally admit that it is a very real possibility they write her as a dark friend, but I'm 100% gonna say that that's bad writing.
I'm with
At
you.
least with how it's been presented so far, I can't see
I
how that
wonder
would
if-
be nice and tight writing.
I wonder if the showrunners, like, is Rafe sitting there watching everyone? Because we've heard this is not our original theory. I think someone on Dusty Wheel
yeah.
was talking about
And
this.
Rafe isn't there all the time.
Is on the chat.
Not always on the chat, but he watches it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure. So is Rafe like, they think she's a dark friend? Like, these guys are crazy? Or was he like, oh,
They're
they've caught,
catching
like,
on.
yeah. We wanted to have this there, and they're picking up on it.
Anyways, so I honestly don't. I think it's a fine change to have him be married and kill his wife, especially if they're going to age everyone up. It makes more sense.
Mhm.
Rand's about at that age. Why not have Perrin be married? It's just that weird interaction with Layla.
So Jake, if there are other things though that are different than the books, that are kind of like someone turns out to be a dark friend that you didn't know about, is that, or things like that, are you hoping for that in the series, or
I
hoping
honestly,
to say it's very true?
I think there's a lot of things that don't really matter in terms of adapting the overall story. So I'm down for changes, whatever it needs, whatever the writers feel like it needs to be. I just don't want changes to be made for the sake of like, oh, we'll make this change to try to add a little more conflict here that isn't tied into another conflict at all. Like with parents, I understand that change, and I think it ties well in with his story arc. But other things just to add, like to try to add vibrance in a way that kind of wastes time and that could be spent on other character development.
And that's one of my complaints we talked about in another episode, right? Is his struggle seems a little forced in the books, right? At some point, you're like, why are you worrying about this right now, right?
Yeah.
And this helps to
Yeah,
that,
I think
right?
this
A
really
lot.
helps. I think it really helps. I know a lot of people are like, why did they add this character? They're just going to kill her off. And I think there's valid points to add her.
What about Matt?
Matt, this is a pretty big change. I know a lot of people didn't, I guess it's not that big of a change in my opinion, but a lot of people didn't like making his parents out to be these bad guys.
Yeah, really, like, Abel Cawthon just gets butchered. Like,
Yeah.
man,
But
his character was cool. Now he's just a crappy. Maybe he'll have an arc. Maybe, maybe
yeah, maybe
later
they'll
on.
make him gray,
yeah.
like an actual gray character, and like he'll have really redeeming qualities
Sure,
later down the line.
Down the line.
I think this change does a very similar thing for Matt's character as Perrin's change did for his, in terms of it helps make a lot of Matt's decisions seem more understandable. It helps you relate to him more and care for him more, instead of just like, Matt, why are you doing this stupid thing right now? Like, this is a serious set of events that are happening to us. Why aren't you just being mature? You add that maturity to him, and you still get a lot of aspects to him. I think specifically it helps like with his, the gambling and like why he would lean into more than anyone else once he's outside the two rivers into this more like luxurious lifestyle and like be all about that.
The allure of the dagger Yeah, the gambling was funny, as he like thought he was super lucky. And he just lost everything. Like, that's some good foreshadowing right there.
Yeah. And I also think it helps with, and this is going to be spoilers past book 4. I don't know what this episode is going to be, but Rand wants to go back home, but can't due to duty. He can't, but he wants to. Perrin wants to go back home, and he does go back home. And in book 4 we see that, and like that is a huge part. Matt never really. I mean, he kind of wants to leave, but he feels a pull of Taviran. But it does kind of seem like Matt just doesn't care about going back home. He's like moved on, and in the books it doesn't really explain other than there's more adventure out here. This change makes it more of a mature decision to not want to go back, while also adding more like, no, I need to go back to save to help my sisters. Like, I think it adds a lot more complexity to it, like a lot more weight and like reasoning to his decisions later down the line.
Yeah. And who knows what could happen in the show. Possibly he does go back.
And I mean, at the end of episode 3, it seems like he's come to the conclusion, like, we can't go back. I really can't, otherwise I'd be a danger to my family. But when Tom says, I'm going east, and he's like, yeah, east sounds good.
Yeah.
Last thing I like about Matt is just his whole character is, I don't want to be the hero.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because he's not coming as a hero now.
Yeah.
Right? Rather, like, he clearly has some problems, right, with
Yeah.
keeping the law and things like that.
But also he like everything he does is to try to be a kind of a hero for his sisters. So I think we right away get that establishment of Matt is, you could kind of see him more on the shady side, but it's all motivated from a heart of gold. So he's a lot more moody, and I think it actually, like, he's very different right now from the Matt in the books, but I think he's more relatable and more likable at this moment in the show.
Okay, to wrap up, let's do a favorite moment and a least favorite, or just something that like didn't sit quite as right with us. And let's try to cover, there's a few things we haven't covered. Like, we didn't talk as much about Shire Lagoth. We didn't talk very much about the White Cloaks. What else did we not talk as much about?
I mean, there's just been a few, like, again, kind of like not Easter eggs, but like foreshadowing, like Moraine mentions Swan. And to me as a fan,
Okay,
maybe that's more fan service. I'm like, oh, is this going to be, are they going to emphasize their friendship more, or maybe their relationship more? I mean, I don't know. That got me excited. But
okay. Well, okay, let's do. Was that a favorite moment of yours?
Favorite moment for me is honestly, I think episode 2's intro with the White Cloaks was really well done. I like how just the White Cloaks in general, I like how you get to see their brutality, but you also get to see the different levels of fanaticism when Bornhald was genuinely a kind man to Moraine in that instance. And then other favorite moment is how Nynaeve comes back. I think that was done really well. I think that was all
Beginning of episode 3.
End of episode 2, beginning of episode 3, how that all ties together. I think that was really well done.
Okay. Caden?
Favorite?
Yep. Or we could vary them so we don't leave a sour taste in people's mouth. Give your least favorite, and then we'll alternate between.
I'll go too. Yeah. One of my least favorite things is something that didn't happen, and that was with Elias not being in the show at all. So
not yet.
Maybe in these episodes,
very low probability.
And that was one of my favorite parts about book 1 was Perrin's growth through that time. So we'll see, but the second is Nynaeve's braid flip moment. It was like that scene was so cool up until the braid flip, and that
it was
like you didn't need the affirmation that it was awesome.
I thought it was a little too
awesome.
A little too over the top for me.
No, that was an awesome moment. That was amazing. It wasn't even like forced. She had just come out of the water. The braid was like disheveled, and she just put it in her place.
No, man, she was looking at the camera doing there was no one that she did not need to do that. She was totally feeling herself.
Yeah.
But I mean, she should have been like, she just killed the troll.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite then?
Actually, I just thought of something. So they said it was the sacred pool, right? And you had, Jake,
talked about this.
You had some issues with the symbol, the Aes Sedai symbol being shown too often. You thought it was forced there with the blood.
I thought it was used.
Yeah.
Not like I liked him in individual instances, but I think altogether it's like, okay, it looks too forced. It didn't look natural enough.
But can we say the explanation for the Aes Sedai symbol appearing there was because it's a sacred pool and there's some source of the one power there, so it made the symbol when blood was thrown in. I don't know.
Like a mini eye of the world.
Sure.
Like ojito of the world.
Sure. I don't know what that means, but I by context I agree. Okay. So my favorite now.
Yeah, and then I also want to address that pool again at the end.
Okay. My favorite was the single line from Matt when they're in Shadar Logoth and Lan does the explanation.
Full exposition.
Yeah, the expedition. Yeah, he talks more than he ever has. And Matt picks up on this and he says, "This is the most you've ever talked maybe in your life." I thought that's just a funny line.
Yeah.
I thought Barney Harris was really good. Like
Amazing.
He got a lot of screen time, and it does just make me really sad that he won't be returning for the rest of the series. But for these 3 episodes, he's done a really good job. Matt has really jumped off the screen for me. And yeah, the whole time in Shire Lagoth, could the CGI have been better? Maybe at times, like when they're up on top of the tower. But I haven't seen a whole lot of shows where big cities look amazing. So I'm not too concerned about that. It would have been fun to have the Trollocs there as well. They weren't fighting them in the city. The running away was good. I generally liked the Shadar Lagoth time.
Okay. I remember how, oh, I know my least favorite is. Okay, least favorite scene. And like I said, I think episode 1 was the messiest episode out of them all. But my least favorite scene is right after the Moraine intro.
Right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning. When
So
Leandrin,
you cringed.
oh,
Right
this
away.
was hard cringe. When Leandrin is chasing down the guy who can channel, that whole sequence, that seemed very much Shannara, like the MTV Shannara show to me, which was the one thing I wanted the show to avoid. And that sequence from the chase to when he's just screaming, being gentled, I guess, like it seemed like just too much drama for not enough reason, and it put me off a little bit. But
Yeah, I can see that. It's one of my favorite scenes
Yeah.
here. So I really liked the scene, and we haven't talked about it, where Moraine is showing Egwene that she has some of this power. And the reason I'm reading it was I liked it better than the book when it happens. But
my wife also liked it better than in the book.
Yeah, like that, just that line where she's like, you don't listen to the wind listens to you. It was like a mic drop kind of. I was like, okay, that's really cool. I was thinking that. And then the other one is the very ending scene of the first episode where they pull in the wheel turning and this become legend, quote. And it's just like, as a fan, I'm like, all right, let's go. That was solid for me.
Also, that episode didn't have an intro, but I think the intros have been pretty cool.
True.
Like tying that together with the wheel and the pattern. I think that's been cool.
Yeah.
So least favorite for me, a couple things. The scene was when Moraine is explaining Manetheren. I think it would have been cooler as some kind of some visual accompanying that. I think the story went on a little long. Rosamund Pike did a good job of telling the story, but it would have been cool to see some kind of visual. It's just, I think new fans especially are going to be like, what is the story? I don't know what the story is. Gosh, the story is going on for a long time. I have no idea why this is connecting to anything. As book fans, we're like, okay, cool. Like Manetheren, Tom tells the story originally, right? I think it, or actually, is it?
No,
Moraine?
Moraine does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's after Matt speaks the old tongue, yelling.
Yeah. And I don't know obviously it's probably way out of budget to have them do an entire sequence, a la like intro of Lord of the Rings type of sequence here. Could like some animated sequence have worked and caught our attention? I don't know. Those are kind of cheesy. Sometimes like a Deathly Hallows type thing. I don't know. I don't know what I wanted, but I
can't believe you liked that part less than that intro scene with Leandrin and the guy running around and screaming.
Well, you already took that. I couldn't like.
I enjoyed the singing and that exposition there. I do think it went on a little long, but I'm down with focusing.
I like the singing. I like the Two Rivers Choir.
Yeah, I would rather cut moments of just like hyping this drama that I didn't think was necessary and trade those for more exposition scenes like that, in my opinion. But that's more fan service too.
I think when the show was starting, I was just like so hyped that that moment didn't even. I was like, okay, whatever. I don't even know what's going on. It's it's a Wheel of Time. Okay, there was some scene with Leandrin. Whatever. On to like I wasn't even thinking what I liked and what I didn't. But I could see some criticism there. Another thing that I didn't like as much was just kind of like in general, I felt like some of the themes of the, fate versus choice versus the turning of the wheel. And that were like, they were there and I liked them at times. I really liked Tam's voiceover with the lanterns when he talked about just doing the best with the lives that we were given. Like, I thought that was like powerful and emotional, but other times is a little half baked, especially when Dana was like, come serve the Dark One. Like, he's going to break the wheel. Like, no, we're not going to serve the Dark One. Like, obviously we trust Moraine and like, we're going for the one we're not going for the one that is literally called the Dark One. Like, clearly
it's just bad PR.
This is not, it's
call
very
him the Great Lord.
Yeah, she should have called him the Great Lord, but maybe too many vocab words for new viewers. Anyway, I like the themes for sure. I like the themes, but I think they're a little half baked at this point in the show.
I disagree with that. I think that it makes the bad guys more, instead of just like, I am an evil guy, I'm a skinny innkeeper, I'm gonna kill you. Sure. You know what I mean? For the Dark Friends,
well,
I think
I like that they believe it, but I don't think it's completely tied in across.
I think it makes a lot of sense, especially as the series progresses. Like I don't want to get into so many
So,
spoilers.
so as the series progresses,
that is a main
I would like to see
philosophical
more.
point.
I would like to tie it together more. We're not there yet, but maybe this is an unfair criticism because we're through 3 episodes. So clearly we have not got to any kind of thematic payoff.
Yeah.
We're in build.
But yeah, overall, honestly, I am a little disappointed and like I'm hesitant in my belief that those that aren't fans of the Wheel of Time already will be really enjoying this on the same level that, and again, I know they're not the same Wheel of Time and Game of Thrones, but it's serving that same purpose Amazon wants of attracting people who aren't already fans of this fantasy series to the fantasy show.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a lot less successful than Game of Thrones at this point.
But one season. I mean, Game of Thrones through 1 season was nothing. It was just a show.
It wasn't. No, it was like
Through season 1.
Season 1. I remember,
but it wasn't a phenomenon. It was not a cultural phenomenon.
There were. Yeah. It season 1 is what helped get it to be that cultural phenomenon.
Sure. Well, I mean, I would hope that after 1 season, we are starting to like get people really excited about it.
I think it's at a weaker start than Game of Thrones.
Okay, through 3 episodes. I
That's
think it's
that's
too
my
early.
opinion.
I think it's too early to say
I'm
that.
saying first 3.
I think it's
Game of Thrones,
irresponsible, Jake. I
first
think that's
3
irresponsible. It's an irresponsible take from Jake.
I'm somewhere in between.
Yeah.
I'm
I really
worried.
liked it myself. I had a great time watching it.
I'm definitely worried that people who aren't fans of the show
Yeah.
wouldn't feel as invested as I feel. Because I, as a fan, I feel really invested and I've loved it. But yeah, I'm sort of in between. I'm not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about a theory of the pool, but should I just say that for another time?
Yeah, we'll save a few bits.
We've been talking.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to mention like Fane, no Mordith as well. We'll save those things for future. We're planning on doing episodes every week, so we got to save some content.
Yeah.
We can't exhaust everything.
Should we throw in some predictions? Oh, we need to go over our bingo card too at some point. Not this episode. Predictions.
Yeah.
I'm thinking an episode will start out with Fane walking through Shadar Logoth, trying to track them. And maybe we'll get some of that.
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just wrap it up there. I don't know if you guys have other predictions.
But predictions, what predictions? I mean, it's hard to say. Like, obviously, we know some things are going to happen with the trailer.
Yeah.
I don't have any hot take predictions, Jake.
I don't either. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
Prediction. We will continue to cover the Wheel of Time. Every episodes are coming out on Thursdays, so we'll try to record reactions on Friday and get episodes of Fantology out the following weekend or beginning of the week. Talking a recap of what we liked, what we did, and etc. Same type of thing. This is a super episode, three times as long, maybe. I don't know. It's always hard to cut it short. But okay, guys.
Cool.
Well,
Awesome.
Wheel of Time is here. We've been waiting years.
It's here.
We've been waiting years. It's finally here.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, no, it's come on.
Just for better.
It's for better, please. If you're watching, please convince Jake in the comments why he needs to calm down a little bit. All right, thanks, fans of Fantology. We'll see everyone later.
See ya.
See ya.